I'd like to welcome everyone to, and just check. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee meeting to be held on the 7th of November 2022. I'd like to declare the meeting open at 5:30 and acknowledge that we're having the meeting on the lands of the Noongar people and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to advise everyone that this meeting is being audio recorded in accordance with council policy. No other audio recording or visual recording is permitted. Item 1, attendance and apologies. I have one apology that has been submitted in advance by Councillor Rob Coles. Haven't received anything else, CEO?
Nothing else, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you. Item 2, petitions and deputations, of which I have nil. Item 3, declaration of councillors and officers' interest, of which I have nil. Item 4, receipt of minutes or reports and consideration of adoption of recommendations from committee meetings held since previous council meetings. 4.1, minutes of previous Audit, Risk and Governance Committee meetings. 4.1.1, Audit, Risk and Governance Committee meeting held on the 22nd of August 2022. Can I have someone to move that those minutes be accepted? Thank you, Ms. Berry. Second, Ms. Newby. Anyone opposed to those minutes being accepted? That is accepted, unopposed. Perfect. Item 5, reports for consideration. 5.1, reports. 5.1.1, strategic risk register quarterly review report, November 2022. Are there any questions in relation to this item? Ms. Newby?
I'm going to struggle a little here because this is the first time I haven't printed off the register. So I have my notes, but I don't have the register itself in front of me, not having an A3 printer, and I can't read it on A4. Risk 1, it's just the employee induction process. Are we on track for the 30th of December completion date?
I understand the employee induction process is being reviewed, and I'm assured that it'll be finished by that date.
Thank you. Sorry. Risk 2, we've talked about the Parks and Garden and the internal auditor has been understaffed. What other areas are significantly understaffed at the moment in the council?
I think it's probably more generally across the board, and probably at not necessarily at senior levels. At we've got one vacant director, obviously, but not necessarily at manager or director level. It's we've had a turnover in a lot of administration and support workers. Some teams are fine and haven't had no changeover. Others have had a bit. Particularly though it has been in the outside workforce, in the depots particularly. But I think most teams have been affected by it in some way, shape or form. Probably every team actually, to be honest.
Okay.
And probably the turnover itself is not the issue so much for us. The issue is the ability then to recruit someone to replace them and recruit a decent quality candidate to replace them. So sometimes the turnover in itself is an issue. But the actual issue for us is that the availability of people to fill those vacancies is a challenge.
So would you say the number of of understaffing is increasing then? Is that what you're saying?
It certainly went down when we first introduced flexible work arrangements and did a salary review across the organisation. It went down to zero pretty much. It has grown up and increased recently though, and that is a major concern, which is prompting us to turn it back into a significant risk, really, because it's starting to impact on the delivery of those services to the community, particularly in some of those areas like Parks and Gardens, for example, where we've had to divert staff from Parks and Gardens works to help start the operation, to transfer the waste transfer station, or to do bushfire mitigation works. Yes. And we have put out quotes to do the organisational roadmap and workforce plan, and those quotes closed on Friday. So we are looking to, we've got funding to engage someone to work with us over the coming months to review those things with the view to create a new organisational roadmap and workforce plan, so that we can look at things like redo the values and relook at why people might want to come and work at the Shire and what that point of difference is. It's not necessarily about money. People are going to greater career options. People are moving, and when they are leaving, we're reviewing the exit interviews, and people are leaving to go to promotions. There might be a coordinator now going to a manager somewhere else. People are leaving to go to all sorts of places, and we are attracting others from other local governments and other surrounding areas more than ever before. So there's a lot of turnover going on generally, I'd say. And I think we're able to carry a certain amount of turnover as an organisation, but we're starting to see the impacts of the community, starting to see the impacts of that, I would say now.
Because I just saw that as being a major risk. It's not only that, it's the time that's diverted with these when new people come on board, is onboarding them. Okay, so there's two. Yes, risk 3. And this is the one where we've moved on. We've got some approval, and we're now waiting for the ministerial approval. I'm just wondering, one, are we anticipating any delays to that approval? And second, are we really ready to hit the ground running there to implement the changes once they're approved?
Thank you for the question. The reality of the minister's timeframe is really at the discretion of the minister. There'll be no way I can give assurance as to when that will be, but I'd like to think before the end of the first quarter of the new calendar year. Once the minister signs off on the amendments, and in whatever way, shape or form she signs off, in 90 days, we are required to report to council with the updated cost contribution plan. And we've got that report basically written, pending the good news from the minister once we receive that. But yes, we're very pleased to see progress.
On that one, just a second question on that risk is that one of our controls is ongoing engagement with the state government regarding rating inequality. And I'm just wondering how we're using that control and what form it takes. And do we receive any formal feedback? I mean, I'm not sure whether it's at political or departmental level, because it's a pretty hot topic around the district.
I think I'll pass to the CEO for that question.
I think the Director of Corporate Services might want to say something first.
Director
And I'm happy
of
to
Corporate
answer.
Services.
Very timely question. I received an update from the Department of Local Government just today, outlining a process to move forward on amending the rating methodology. That has been in response to quite a bit of back and forwards over the last month or so. Council adopted the new rating strategy that requested a rural review be done, essentially looking at those UV rated properties that would be better off coming over onto the GRV rating methodology. So just today I've got a finalised process that the department would be happy with for us to progress that. So there'll be a report coming to council. I'm somewhat ambitiously hope for November.
Thank you, Director.
If I can add to that, Madam Presiding Member, last week I was at the Local Government Professionals Conference and the Minister was a speaker at the conference, and the Minister was asked a question about what are you doing about rating reform and rating value methodology changes. And his response, if I could paraphrase it, was that he had to decide what elements were in the first tranche of reform, and he's done that. And then once that's done, he'll be progressing to other future reforms. It's probably not a priority for him in the first lot of reforms, was the message I got.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Councillor Strawtons?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have a question about a little bit similar to what Eileen asked about staff retention, and particularly again as it relates to things like OneCom, where we train staff and we're band 2, and they once they're trained they could be attracted to band 1 council areas. I just would like to know if we have anything in place that addresses that.
Could I ask the CEO to respond to that?
Well, I guess my response, I might ask the Director of Corporate Service to add something in a minute, but I guess my response would be that we've actually found that some of the recent managers we've recruited, perhaps over the last 12 months, have actually come from band 1s to us. So I don't know it's all a one-way street from us to others. I think I would think it's an attractive platform to have for others to come and work with us. But I don't know necessarily what else you could do. You can't stop people from moving on, and you've got to train them when they're here. So we are a bit of a training organisation to some degree like that. But yeah, certainly some of the managers we've recruited recently have come from band 1s to us, which has been refreshing. But I'll ask the Director of Corporate Service to add to that.
Yes. So I guess just reiterating what the CEO has just said is that certainly we could not survive without training our people, and that does make them more appealing to band 1s. However, the very fact that we have such a modern working style now, or we're well on the way to developing a modern working style, makes us attractive for the best up and coming talent in the industry. And just as I did put a paragraph to this in the report regarding the OneCom contract renegotiation. So our ICT team at the moment is led by a gentleman from the City of Stirling. Our more recent recruits are from the City of Perth and City of Kwinana, and some of our more longer standing members of that team from City of Gosnells. And it was OneCom that allowed them to make that transition to us, or was appealing for them to make that transition to us.
Thank you very much, Chair. They're very good answers. I feel somewhat reassured. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions in relation to the strategic risk register or the item? Yeah,
Yes.
Ms. Newby?
Right, sorry. Risk 6, I'm just wondering if we're actively ensuring all the controls are being followed. Now, I've got here number 20. As I said, I've only got my old one here, so I haven't got my current one. Number 26. What have I got? Hang on. Yes, number 26. Yes, it's risk 6. Yeah, it's risk 6. Sorry. Right, and it's number 26, and yeah, federal government grant for the second, because that was meant to be installed by December 2021. So that's what we've still got here. So I'm just thinking, should we updated that if it has been installed, and also 28? I'm just wondering about what's happening with that one.
Thank you, Ms. Newby. Could I ask that the CEO provide a response to that?
I might ask whether the Director of Development Services or even the Acting Director of Community Services knows if number 26 has been achieved. You mean, Ms. Newby, the federal government grant for a second satellite for installation of the SJ evacuation centre? Is that
Yes,
what you
it's saying estimated installation by December 2021.
I don't know. I've just asked whether anyone knows whether that's actually occurred.
And confirm they did do some electrical investigations, and they were working on it. I can't confirm whether that has been complete, but we can certainly take that on notice and get back to you.
And the second one about the membership of the Country Bushfire Working Group established career fire station. The Director of Development Services, can you answer anything about number 28? It's certainly the Career Fire Station Working Group.
Everyone. Thank you for the question. Information has been sent around to councillors regarding something that is confidential in that regard, about an announcement in terms of the career fire rescue station for the Shire.
So we have been part of the working group and working actively with that. Yes, an announcement will be made very soon.
Thank you. I was just, I'm sort of looking at some of the controls now to make sure that we are following up on them.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item?
3 more.
Ms Newby.
Risk aid, control number 15, which is the process for transfer of asset information from developers to Shire's operations teams to ensure maintenance. I mean, it's an old one, we know, and because it was subject to a condition on an audit report, I was just wondering, are we now able to do that in a timely manner?
Well, as it happens, Madam Chair, we do have the Acting Director of Infrastructure here, who has been working very closely with developers on their handover requirements, and Nino might be able to explain what we've actually been doing to improve the handover of parks and facilities back to the Shire from developers.
Yes, thank you, CEO. Yes, so prior to accepting handover or issuing practical completion to developers for public open spaces and roads or assets that they're constructing, developers are required to provide to the Shire officers as constructed details, which are passed on to our assets officer for verification and input into our asset data system.
But just a follow-up question on that, are we then taking that up in our financial accounts? Because that was the issue with the audit, where they were in the asset register but not in the financial accounts.
I might just jump in with that. Yes, so I can confirm that it is occurring. The asset management functional asset data management, not to step on anyone's toes, the asset data management function does reside in finance now, and yes, that is occurring. To that end, we recently did a very thorough review of the facilities. We've now got excellent facilities data, and we've just completed a procurement process for road data, and we're looking at some bridge culvert data, but that risk more pertains to gifted assets from developers on an ongoing fashion, which obviously come through the acting director infrastructures and then come into our team. Yes, that process is in place and functioning.
Thank you.
I could just add to that, the bit that we're working on now is the bit about future planning for the workforce needs of the operations facility. So we haven't been able to accurately in the past forecast or align when parks are coming on board in a year's time or 2 years' time with the extra plant and staff that we'll need. And we've engaged, council's funded this year, and we've engaged a company called the Glen Flood Group, who are doing a review now and a plan for what that resourcing will be going forward. So they'll give us a bit of a plan for that. So we're hoping by the end of this year and the next budget process, we can actually, with some confidence, come to council with that and our workforce plan and say, these are our future staffing requirements as these new parks come on board.
Good to hear. No doubt cheer up the auditor.
Anna,
Yes.
and a further question, Ms Newby?
Well, I have 2 more.
Yeah,
Risk
two.
12, action number 9. I'm looking at my old one here. That's a community. That's the community infrastructure development contribution.
Yeah,
right?
that's the correct one.
Yeah. I'm just saying, is that being completed?
I'll ask the Development Services Director.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, that was completed a couple of years ago.
No, that's fine.
And has been collecting funds, Director.
Yeah, we're about just close to 900,000 in the kitty now. So based on around $2,500 per lot. Yeah, it's money that's flowing nicely into to assist with the delivery of community infrastructure.
That's good. Again, as I just said, I'm just following up on some of the controls to make sure they are working as we intend.
Indeed, and council is allocating each year, I'm looking for the Director of Corporate Services, 500,000 from memory into the reserve for our matching contributions to those. Might have gone up a bit, I think. Hasn't it?
Yes, it's gone up a bit. So that is growing by an inflation factor, and then there'll be depending on the revaluation process that occurs, that guides the projected cost of the infrastructure and the projected per unit lot contribution. The Shire is also projecting to have a significant increase in that contribution or matching contribution as well, and it's funded via the long-term financial plan.
So could I just ask, so you're saying it's CPI indexed, is it?
Well, it's a growth factor, not exactly CPI, but a growth factor. So there's a valuation, well, a revaluation process that occurs frequently that looks at what is the cost of that infrastructure to construct, and therefore what should be the developer's contribution, and therefore what should be the Shire's contribution.
Is there a final question?
There is one. This is my final. And this is risk 14. And we've talked about it a little before. And a lot of the controls that we have revolve around bushfires and COVID. And I'm just saying, are we satisfied that the Shire is prepared for any emergency through the controls that we have?
I'd like to ask the CEO to respond to that first.
I don't know that I could answer that question and say yes, to be entirely honest. I think that we have good plans in place. I think that we have good people in place. I think that we are working through a number of issues, and we have good relationships with stakeholders in place. Can we respond to any disaster that comes? I'm confident that we have the systems and the people and the processes to do that. I'm sure we will never do any of that perfectly, but probably our biggest challenge right now is responding to the changes to the workplace health and safety legislation for the bushfire brigades. So, and then probably recruiting and retaining volunteers in the bushfire brigades and helping them moving forward to have volunteers there. So I think it's a constant work in progress, particularly for organisations in the environment that we're in. I wouldn't put my hand on my heart and say it's all perfect. That's why it's a significant risk, I guess. And if anyone's got any other controls they'd like to see or actions, we're happy to hear them.
Are there any further comments from the Director of Development Services in relation to that?
No, thank you, Chair. I think that captures it nicely.
The Acting Director of Community Services wants to add any more to that, because that action's largely about our response in welfare centres and things. Do you want to add any more to that, Rebecca?
Can I please ask Mrs. Newby to repeat the question that you asked?
Are we satisfied the Shire is prepared for any emergency through the controls, not just for bushfire and COVID? And I can just put the frame around that is that most of the controls we have are specifically mentioned bushfires or COVID rather than general, another form of emergency, if you like, that may emerge.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? I have a mover. Ms. Newby, moved. Second. Thank you. Mrs. Sorelli. Any objections? Carried unanimously. Item 5.1.2, implementation report, Regulation 5 and Regulation 17 reviews. Are there any questions in relation to this item? I have someone to move the recommendation. Thank you, Ms. Berry. Someone to second. Thank you, Ms. Newby. Anyone opposed? Item is carried unanimously. Item 5.1.3, update on audit activities and audit program. Are there any questions in relation to this item? Yes, Ms. Berry.
It says here that the audit is planned in January 23. When is the next one planned after that? And how regularly are they likely to occur?
As the Director of Corporate Services.
Might defer to our manager of governance as that function now will reside in the governance space.
So council, through the audit committee, adopted a forward program for audit commencing in the next financial year. So the plan would be for a procurement exercise to identify an audit firm or audit firms to conduct those audits. That procurement process would occur in the period between January and June of next year. Then the full audit program to commence in the next financial year, pending council's allocation of a suitable budget.
Are there any further questions in relation to this item? Is there someone happy to move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Rich. Thank you, Ms. Berry. Anyone opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5.1.4, which is confidential information and communication technology update. Could I have someone to move us go behind closed doors? Thank you, Mr. Sorelli. Happy to second. Thank you, Ms. Newby. Anyone opposed? Thank you.